We go
Almost.
almost.
And now,
All righty. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody to our July meeting of the currently named Campaign Awareness Task Force. By the end of this meeting, I think it will be called the Community Engagement Task Force because we have quorum. And that's very exciting. Thank you to our task force members for being here and for our guests. We're going to do a round of introductions and we'll just start the conversation. I will go first. My name is Joaquin and I'm a member of the Human Rights Commission. I chair this task force and I'm a member of of Ward 8. Hope, who are you?
My name is Hope. I am a member of the Human Rights Commission and a guest of this task force, and I live in Ward 4. I am going to pass it to Lisa.
Thanks, Hope. My name is Lisa. I live in Ward 3. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a member of the Human Rights Commission and a guest this evening. So I will pass to David.
My name is David Reinhold. I'm a resident of Polk County. I'm a commissioner on the Human Rights Commission and a member of this task force, and I'll pass it to Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Ostrand-Punch. I'm a member of the Human Rights Commission as well as the task force. My pronouns are she, her, and I will pass it to Zeke.
Hello, I'm Zeke Fadem. I am also a member of the Human Rights Commission, Ward 3. And who has not gone? I think this Gretchen, unless I'm incorrect. I apologize if I missed anyone.
I think you're right. Hey, this is Gretchen Bennett. I am staff to the Human Rights Commission and use she, her pronouns. Good evening, everybody.
Lovely. I think, you know what, David, I've known you for almost a year and a half now in this commission. And every time you say Polk County, you make me feel so inferior for not saying Polk County. So I think I'm going to start having some pride in that. I'm a resident of Ward 8 and a resident of Polk County. Okay, well, thank you everyone for being here. Gretchen, do we have any public comment?
We do not.
Well, darn. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for April, May, and June? Kathy or David?
I will move to approve the minutes from April, May, and June.
Is there a second?
I can second it. I wasn't here in some of those meetings.
That's fair. Can I, if you feel comfortable, you don't have to, I can second it.
You can.
All right, and I second that if David, or I third it if David would like to second it. So yeah, so seconded. Are they approved?
Yay.
Is that a yes? Okay.
Yay.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Kathy. Okay. Well, that gets us to let's just do some low-hanging fruit before we talk about our conversation with our presentation to council. It also gives us time for Hamadi to arrive too. But the first is the name of this task force has been a topic of lively conversation between me and Kathy for some months. And just to recap it, the task force is currently called the Community, what is it called? The Campaign Awareness Task Force. And it's referred to kind of locally as ACT Task Force, which is punchy and nice, but it's, I think, maybe no longer captures what we do here. I like to view our role more as one of community engagement and helping build relationships with other organizations, other boards and commissions, members of the community in a way that's more focused and concentrated than can be done in the general commission. And so with that in mind, I offer the Community Engagement Task Force as a new name. do folks have, I know Kathy's opinions, but if you'd like to say them again, please do, but do folks have any reactions to that before we make a motion to formally change it? I think if Rita were here, who was the inaugural chair of this task force, she would probably bring up the reasons for that. But I think maybe the work that we do here has changed a little bit since its original conception. I don't know if you would say that's fair, Gretchen, or not, but that's kind of the idea behind the change of the name. If folks have any other comments or input.
If I may, I have a comment in support of the name, community engagement. From my experience with boards in Oregon City, having the two words community engagement implies that we're open to the community. And if that's one of the goals, one of the objectives of the task force, then yeah, I think that that's the correct name, and that signals to the community that it's for them as well. So.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, that is definitely one of our ambitions. And in fact, as we all know, non-commissioned members can serve as members of task force, and we have a non-commissioned member who sits in our task force, though is absent today, and has been very engaged with the work that we do. So I think that's a really good point. Thank you, Lisa, for that. Mm-hmm. Any other ideas before we move on and I make a motion?
The only other thing I would add is with the awareness campaign task force, to me, it kind of implies that there's maybe a limited scope to what we're doing. And really our work has evolved, as Joaquin has already said. And so I think the community engagement title is more accurate now than it may have been when the task force first began. So, yeah.
Okay. David, just as a member of the task force, an opportunity to say anything if you'd like.
No, I like the name, and I will go ahead and make the motion.
Oh, okay. Please do.
I'll make the motion to change the name to its Community Engagement Task Force. Is that right?
That's right. You know what? Can I just have this, Kathy? Can I have it? I second the motion. Oh my gosh. Okay, thank you. Well, that feels good. All righty, great. Let's move on to the monthly column conversation. I want this to be I want to give time to this because I know Zeke and others. I feel like we were cut off at the very end with limitations around interpretation, right? At the very end, we were butting up against the hour. So I want to allot some time for this conversation. So I will begin by asking the question of Gretchen. Before you went on vacation, remind me, we spoke over the phone and we were having a conversation around this monthly column. And you were to meet with some local folks in the media. And I think you had a question for them that I'll let you. Why don't you tell us how the conversation went?
Sure, sounds good. Except I want to amend the word meet. I didn't get the opportunity for face-to-face meeting, but I sent out to 5 local radio stations and then 5, I don't know what the word would be. In the old days, it would have been print, but you would maybe say print or digital sources, outlets. So reached out to 10 media sources and shared the option, shared the 2 columns that we had written and asked them a question coming out of our conversation, Joaquin, in the last meeting. Let's see. The question that I included was, because of the collaborative nature that the content is developed, and to endow the columns with a Human Rights Commission stamp of approval, they thought about not signing a specific person's name, but rather signing as the Salem Human Rights Commission. They would love your feedback on that, as well as on this overall idea. Yeah. So I embedded that question I only received one reply and it was from a digital print source. And they did answer that question. And they said that their perspective is they'd be more they'd be more interested in a more specific piece written by a single identifiable person. They said that might be about a case they worked on or heard about that illustrated something important about Salem. But I also understand that might take more time or effort than our all volunteer team would have available. So that's the only reply that I got to the question. I had included that I was going to be away in my note. And so I don't know if some folks are waiting until now to start replying,
Yeah.
because I invited them to think about things and talk to their colleagues. But anyway, yeah, there's the update, Joaquin.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think the reason I Gretchen and I touched base about this in anticipation of her conversation was in response to some things that Zeke had raised at the last meeting, and I see they're raising their hand now. So Zeke, if you want to go ahead and jump in here, please do.
Oh, thank you so much. I just wanted to clarify, I guess, where my concern was coming from. So I think, I don't know if this is the reasoning behind why that publication that replied to Gretchen did so, but yeah, we did get cut off last time, and I guess I just want to clarify my concern around the column authorship is like, generally, as far as I'm aware of, the principle in journalistic ethics is that you need a identifiable person or group of people to take responsibility for the accuracy of content. That's also a concern with like in defamation claims, like if a whole group approves something that's different than the individual. Hopefully we would not publish anything that would result in that happening. But just as a matter of ethics, whenever you're writing something, you need to authenticate who it comes from. So I think that my concern, I think it would be possible if to approve something in the name of the Human Rights Commission, if every single individual Human Rights Commissioner agreed that it was their statement equally, but I don't think that's reasonable to do without that consensus. That's kind of the nuance that I had meant to clarify at the last meeting, but had not been able to. The concern is that it claims the authorship of everyone involved without necessarily directly hearing from them that that's the case. So that's kind of just the ethical concern I have about, is it right to claim that it's coming from a whole group decision? And I think that that also means that the voice can't be first person if you're writing as the Human Rights Commission. You can't say, I looked into this and I found this interesting. Then you're writing as the Human Rights Commission hereby finds. And I think when we're thinking about writing as a public body, like as a city entity that like to some extent represents the city of Salem, I think that there's a different level of responsibility to not share personal opinions or thoughts under that name without forming broad consensus and understanding that that's the level that statement is coming from, if that makes sense. So that I think that ultimately it's a bit more inconvenient if we did go the consensus option, like every article requiring like a meeting of the Human Rights Commission where everyone agrees that's what we want to write, I think that would lead to a lot of either commissioners not being represented in a way, maybe they're not speaking up, or if they are speaking up, a big drain on meeting time as we, have arguments over tiny little word differences and things like that. So that's my perspective on why I'm a little bit skeptical of the byline being the whole group, but I also respect where you're coming from with wanting it to be a collaborative project. I think in that case, it might be better to sign perhaps each individual who worked on the article can have their name appear. That might be another option that would allow it to be collaborative where it needs to be. But yeah, that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually don't disagree with anything that you've just shared, Zeke. So thank you for that. And I think we'll that adds a lot to the conversation we're about to have. Hope, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with what Zeke said at the ending. I already had my hand raised, but I don't know if this is ignorant. I'm not actually aware of all the rules and, the ethics involved. But personally, I feel like a great way to maybe like compromise on this or find like a middle ground would be to write like at the ending or under authorization, just the Salem Human Rights Commission, and then in like parentheses or something, the members who wrote or collaborated on the piece, specifying who it is, allowing for like legalities, but also saying that it came from us as a collective whole. I'm not sure if that's helpful. That's just my idea.
No, that is. Thank you. I've given this some thought, which is rare for me. I appreciate Zeke's perspective. I have also spent some time in publishing, and this is obviously the kind of the journalistic ethic is of paramount importance. And I've come up with maybe 2 pitches that I would love to hear input about. The first is that I'll say that both do not have, well, I'll just say both, and you tell me what I'm trying to say. The first one is this: we sign them by name. Trees canopy cover on riverfront is a human rights issue, Lisa Novak. And with whatever partner outlet, it's part of a column series from the Human Rights Commission. So they are individual commissioners who are writing for this column. So it has the tethering of outreach from the commission that we are looking for, but I, Lisa Novak, am writing it. And so that actually is nice in a way that we were having not difficulties around, but maybe that's even a further step removed from the city that allows us to express even maybe more strongly our personal beliefs. That would be a communications question for Courtney. Gretchen, I don't know. I'm not wed to that idea. That's just a question that would require being answered. The second idea is that if a partner outlet has the appetite to not require individual name on a byline, that it exclusively is the authorship of the Community Engagement Task Force as opposed to the General Commission. So it would come from the Community Engagement Task Force, authored by, and that is a 4 or 5 person subsection of the 15 or how many commissioners are we? 12, 15?
15 potentially seated people, and you've got 5 on this group. Yeah.
Right. One of which is a non-public affiliate, Rita.
Right. Right.
So we have 4 commissioners and Rita, a former commissioner, but not one currently. Those are my 2 pitches in light of what Zeke shared and what I think is genuine considerations on their part. We don't have to decide right now because we're still waiting on feedback from. We don't have anybody to partner with yet, so this is not a now question. But what are folks' reactions to either one of those 2 ideas, and do they have preference, or are both bad, or what are? Yeah, Zeke.
Thank you so much. I think either option that includes individual names is totally good. I think it's totally acceptable, like Hope was saying, also to include the titles of the authors as commission members. Just because that's something that is still like a detail about us personally. We're not necessarily representing the commission by doing that, but just sharing a thing that we happen to do. I think I would be still skeptical of writing it in the name of the task force, just because there's still the same problem ultimately of writing it as a collective. That could be like, it might be easier for the task force to approve something collectively, but I still think that having individual authorial responsibility also, it gets rid of those problems with voice of trying to write something saying like, we have this experience and we think this and etc., rather than saying, I have come to this opinion as a human being rather than as a city body, which I think is honestly more persuasive to the average person rather than saying, you know, this commission finds, etc., etc. So that's my perspective. I think either the solution you gave as option one or Hope's solution, both are perfectly good, but that's my reading.
Great. Any other insights, considerations?
I'll just say, these are issues I never thought of before, and I have missed a couple of meetings, I think at least, and so I missed out on the prior conversation, but I'm okay with tying it in. I mean, from a personal standpoint, I like it being from the commission as a whole. And that's part of what we were trying to do with this whole idea, was get information out into the community about the commission. But hearing what the concerns are, I don't have a problem with having individual names attached to it. And I kind of like the idea of over time, having it come from different commissioners so that over time it is from the commission, even though an individual specific column is not from the commission as a whole. I think that was your first point, Joaquin. Yeah, it's just something I hadn't thought about before, but it sounds okay to me.
Yeah, and I think I think both what Hope presented and my here too known as option one kind of preserve the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish, which is what matters most to me. You know what I mean, which is the increasing the presence of the commission in the city by way of communicating perspectives and insights to a larger audience by way of a readership or something like that. So that is the goal, and whatever way we can do that most effectively and ethically, I am for. And so I will say too that something I no longer remember what I was going to say, but that I'll just make that statement and we can leave it there. Any other comments or about that? Nope. Yeah, go ahead, Zeke.
Oh, sorry. I just had one last question. I was curious for Gretchen if this sort of thing had ever been done before, or even like in any other city body, and how it was handled. Just because I'm just curious if this is like the first time this issue has come up, or what the deal is.
Thank you. I've been with it 10.5 years. It's the first time a regular column in this issue has come up before. In the past, individual members of the Human Rights Commission have personally authored, op-ed pieces or offered letters to the editor that have been published before, but it was always like an individual person. So it just didn't ever come up as a discussion because they signed their name and shared their thoughts. And so, yeah.
So in terms of next steps, I think Gretchen, could you, I think a couple things. I think maybe reaching out to communicate to Courtney or her colleagues around what we're talking about right now and what's been brought up and maybe this newer direction.
Sure.
To get her insights around whether that changes things from a city perspective, communication, legal, otherwise.
Okay.
Would be helpful, because ultimately we're at the mercy of both the city and whatever the appetite of the outlets is. And so, there's, I agree, and I really agree with what Zeke has been saying. And there's a world in which an outlet, maybe unlikely, but there is a world in which an outlet says, I don't mind if the HRC is the byline, or there's a world in which the city says, with individual names. I'm not sure how tenable this is, and we may have to abandon the monthly column idea in its totality in favor of, weekly or regular, rather monthly statements, like releases, press releases, essentially, in the form of the HRC byline, kind of anonymous byline, and this more impersonal language and stuff. And that to me would be less effective, and I think would warrant a conversation around what other strategies are available to us in terms of outreach and engagement. So we would benefit, I think, from those insights from the city, and hearing as maybe you hear more from outlets what their perspectives are as well on this question would be really informative.
Okay. You bet, will do.
Yeah, thank you. Chair Jackson, welcome.
Thank you. I'm in my car driving, so I turned my camera off so I don't make anybody seasick.
That's very considerate of you. Thank you for joining us. You haven't missed anything yet. We've talked about, well, not nothing. We've changed our name, talked about the monthly column, but we've kind of been waiting for your arrival, talking about the upcoming city council presentation. Before we, I don't know, I don't want to put you on the spot. I know you're driving, Hamadi, but before we open up the conversation, and I would love to hear from Hamadi. General asks would be, we've been sitting with the results from the survey for some time now. We've heard from the professor and her students. We've all been involved with development of the survey. We've already had, I think, a very productive conversation around the survey already at the general meeting. So I'm looking for us to kind of refine our thoughts and just have continuing the conversation that we started a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. And I will preface the conversation by saying that I was at City Hall a few days ago, and this is already on the minds of the city councilors. This is this presentation that's forthcoming. So this is a thing that the people are really excited about, and I think could be the beginning. Maybe I'll reserve these comments for later, but could be a beginning of a newer, stronger relationship between the HRC and City Council. But I'll just say that as to kind of underscore the importance of this conversation and future conversations and the presentation generally. Not that we need a reminding of that, but just to say that. Hamadi, do you have any preferences for how this conversation should go, or any thoughts or questions that you're bringing us this evening?
As far as how the conversation about the presentation, or like what kind of structure we're looking at, because really I've been thinking more or less expounding on, like, of course we'll go over the data from the survey and everything, but I really want to run with the whole idea of the I don't want to say it wrong, it's the indigenous Mexican American or indigenous population and the discrimination that they feel, and how we were talking about maybe some type of sanctuary or something. I really want to drill down on that as well. Like, to me, I feel that that's like a really important issue that we shouldn't like mention lightly or just mention in passing. I feel like that's something we really should like hammer on.
Okay. Thank you. That's as the person who brought that up, I would agree. That's something I'm interested in talking about. Maybe as a way of signposting this conversation, Gretchen, could you talk to us about what a presentation looks like, how long we have? I think it's like 15 minutes, I don't know, and what City Council is expecting of us, and sharing that in the hopes of informing how we frame this conversation, or what even should go into the presentation at all, and what is best suited for what might make it most effective in your experience.
Yeah, thank you. I'll preface and end with the point that I want you to hear that I really honestly see and believe the work of the Human Rights Commission is of interest and a priority to the city. That being said, I've sat through enough meetings to just see how much content is coming at them. And so this is a great time to consider brevity, to consider focusing key points and all of your communication skills. I think that it can be so difficult when things go real deep and detailed, and they're tired and it's late, it's in the evening. So my opinion would be to have a fairly high and tight presentation that's really engaging by hitting key points and then letting them unpack it with their questions as they want to. So I guess I would consider it, I would suggest that. So I think you might include what the belonging survey was, the partnership with Western, the data, the fact that it's not the first one we've done. So we have points of comparison, just a little bit about the survey, but you don't want to spend 10 minutes on that, or, we've lost the window, right, of folks' active listening ability. And you could be moving into the recommendations that are coming out for you. And then it sounds like from Hamadi's perspective and from your discussion last time, that a real keen area of interest for you is thinking about, our Spanish-speaking communities, our Hispanic, our Latinx communities, and in particular, starting to explore what some policy ideas or resolution ideas might be there for them, and including a sanctuary. You'll want to, if you want to bring that up, we'll certainly want to do a little bit of homework on what they've already done, because they have done something a few years ago, but it's been a while. So that'll be an important part of the homework. And again, not going too far into, so that's an idea that for you all is brand new. And so you want to think about, like, maybe you're there to kind of get their initial reaction or something like that, but you wouldn't want to come presenting as though you've done all of the research and the homework and you've met with all of the stakeholders that might be interested and effective, because that won't be realistic. So also a little bit of clarity on where you are in your thinking process with the idea would be smart too.
I did have one further thing, if you guys didn't mind.
Go ahead.
I also wanted to wait and see what the rest of the committee, like the rest of the HRC, what they had, because remember I had asked if people wanted to go through and put their own, like, what was important to them. I also want to see what they bring to the table, so that way we can put it together, because I want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. So. I don't know what you guys think of that.
Yeah, thank you, Hamadi. Obviously, we want whatever is communicated to council to be representative of everyone's time and interests and consideration. I really have internalized, Gretchen, what you just shared, and what you shared a few weeks ago about process here. Yeah, I think we're going to have a larger conversation here, but I think specifically around the desire to move on issues of sanctuary, accessibility, policing, and Indigenous Latin Americans. I think the most that we can really say is that this will be an area of conversation and focus for us in the coming year or so. I mean that in total humility, because I've been trying to do my homework on Oregon law and state statute, and what the city of Eugene was doing, what Portland's tried to do, other comparable cities in the region, and it's going to, and that process will need to be iterative for the whole commission. It's just going to take a long time. And Gretchen's insights a few weeks ago around how long from inception to adoption in terms of Chapter 97 changes, a little over a year. I mean, we're in the really early stages of this conversation, And as important as it is, I think we need to be real about that when it comes to our, and I don't, and if it's not a priority for the whole commission, it's not a priority. It's something that I even mentioned when I brought it up. As important it is to me as it is to me personally, as necessary to have a course of action, I think it is. It wasn't something I was even prepared to bring up at the time, but I felt moved because I remember Linnell share things and so I shared it. So if others are not bought into this, it doesn't have to be the thing. It's just, but I think it definitely could take the form of, we know among racial and ethnic lines, this is the community that is reporting to be most impacted in these ways, and as such, we'll be receiving our more focused attention and the conversations that in the next year or so. That kind of language, and I think that especially as we were kind of balancing the equities last time around, how do we go about talking about this both amongst ourselves and with elected leaders on council? I mean, this, and more importantly, with community partners who work in among the community and police and law enforcement. These are really complicated and minutiae conversations, and the way in which we go about that, I think, will benefit from a more cautious approach, just because this is also a very polarizing issue. I'll just say that as a general comment. Zeke, go ahead, please interrupt me.
Oh, thank you. I guess thinking about what I think is important for the commission to hear, I wanted to echo what Hamadi was saying about it being important to come with, I think, a strong recommendation. I definitely defer to what Gretchen was saying about needing to accurately represent our level of insight on the issue. But I think that there are a few things, at least from my knowledge of the survey, that are things that are not just the Human Rights Commission's feelings, but are things that the community who took time to respond to our survey told us. And I think that we also have a responsibility to be strong in representing that. And I would hate for us to take what the community has said to us and then kind of say, like, some people feel this way, some people feel that way. These commissioners have this opinion. I think that when we're talking about a body that really needs to get quickly a sense of the most major things, I think it'd be ideal to go to them with at least some kind of action item. And I think ideally that would be an action item that we find in the community a desire for. So I don't know if there's any activist groups or community organizations that we might be able to partner with on the issue that Hamadi and Joaquin were talking about, or on the policing issue, which, as I remember from the survey, was also very strong and something that I would love to make sure is included. But I think, to me, those are the really concrete issues that I want to make sure that we give a sense of urgency and strength to, as being things that we really do need the council as the higher decision-making body to address, not only from our perspective as individuals who have an interest in those issues, but also based on the perspective of the strength of community feeling.
I absolutely
so I don't know
agree.
if you, Hamadi, have any thoughts on that.
I absolutely agree. Zeke, would you please share some of those takeaways that you found from the survey that you would like to see us communicate to council? Because I totally agree with you.
Thank you so much, Joaquin. To me, I think the biggest thing I personally took, and I'm sure other commissioners have other highlights that they remember, and it's a product of memory at least. But for me, the issue with discomfort with using the police as a resource is something that I think that council really needs to hear. If I think about what's the biggest gulf between, perception versus reality about how people in our communities feel safe reporting either outright bias crimes or just maybe less severe incidents of bias in general, I think there's a massive misperception that because it's illegal, people will be willing to go to the police. When in reality, if you use the police as your sole like crime solving resource, you're not going to, we see from our survey that the community does not feel comfortable with that. So I think when we're thinking about like exploring police alternatives, that's an issue that I think our survey tells us is something that will need to happen if we're going to have this feeling of safety come from these groups of people. So I think because to me that's linked with a very key decision point for the council about where investments should be made. To me, that's what I think is one of the key highlights that I would really like to see hammered home. Along with, I think there are other things that we can talk about, but to me, that's a really key issue that I want to make sure the council really spend some time thinking about. And I think that's worth, if you think about like the real estate that we have access to in terms of the council's time, to me, that's a really key priority.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that also is really where my comments around Indigenous Latin Americans last time comes from too, is just the total lack of trust on the part of that community with law enforcement and other kind of government representatives generally, and a lot of that comes from issues around status and other things. I take that point, and I think it's especially urgent alongside the considerations from what we're hearing directly from community members, but also because we were talking about, it's a topic of conversation in the city around the payroll tax and where is that money going to? You know, that's almost $30 million going to public safety. And so as that money is coming in, it's going to be a especially important conversation around how we spend it and in what ways. So I take your point to heart, and I think that's a really important one.
I have a comment if you don't mind.
Oh, please, everyone is open to comment.
So I think one of the things that we should really take advantage of, and is one of the things that Zeke just brought forward, is that around the issue of policing, with us having representatives from Salem Police actually sitting in on our meetings and things, that it seems like we should really kind of tap in and say, hey, you know, this is one of the things, and you know, how can we address this, or at least ask them, is there things that they have ongoing? And you know, I mean, this survey was really detailed in the fact that it gives us an idea of things that we really should focus on. So the things that I wouldn't say, I mean, for lack of a better term, are easy, like we have immediate access, we really should take advantage of. I think that's just my opinion.
Definitely. I'm gonna go to you, Zeke, in just a second. But there was a part of my earlier question to you, Gretchen, which I think, how much time do we have? I know questions can be asked of us as follow-ups from council, but how much time do we have in our original presentation?
I don't have a specific time limit. The conversation that I had with the team was roughly 5 to 6 minutes.
Oh,
5 to 7 minutes is the discussion that I had with the team as we were starting to prepare out September meetings. And again, that's partially just recognizing not the lack of importance here, but how much is hitting them right now, and the recognition of how late the meetings go. And so is it possible to keep, you know, a focused presentation and then let them unpack as they would like to?
that's interesting. That's less than I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was thinking like 15 minutes. So I know staff presentations are usually 15. I watch all the council meetings.
I know, and we're trying to get away from that. That's not,
Okay.
yeah. And if you say, like, if we come back and we have something that we believe needs to take 15 minutes, I'm sure willing to come back and share that and present that. But I guess and you can help me understand, but as I start to think about the outline, we might be able to achieve, you know, something more focused in. I think to go deep into some of these other topics, we're going to need a little bit more prep time. I'm at least going to need some time with all of you to help unpack some of the information on each of these topics, because I'd hate for you to come in unprepared, you know. I was thinking of the irony of where we are today with this with this particular group, because I remember some years ago, the lack of trust with government and police to report was part of the origin of creating the Human Rights Commission. So there could be community members with whom other community members could report concerns of bias or hate incidents or crime, you know, and so and then this committee formed, this particular task force formed to try to help spread the word about that resource. So I want to make sure you all, if you do want to hit particular points strongly and go deeply in those and unpack them more, I think we need a little bit of time together to make sure that you have all the history and the awareness of that going into it. I'd want you to be prepared.
So I hear that. And we are slated at present to go in early September 11th. Is that the date you shared?
Yeah.
I don't know, Hamadi, I need your input here. Given what you've just shared, I'm thinking of 6 or 7 minutes, and it's just not enough time, in my opinion.
What I'm thinking is, as far as the police aspect, that's something that we can really approach on our own. We don't have to use our council time for that, because like I said, we have members, we at least have one person, and that person alternates. So we can handle that on our own. But as far as the council, I'm thinking maybe three points that from the survey that really stood out that we should really hammer in on. And then the sanctuary part, and just let them know that, hey, this is on our radar. This is what we're seeing in the community. This is, what we as the HRC would like to work on, and then put it that way. So that way it gives them time for questions and everything. And then that gives us more focus. So with our limited time, we can really bring home what we need to bring home.
Yeah, I hear you, and I'm not. I'll back down here if I have to. I'm just thinking of, and Zeke, I see your hand. I just between introducing us, not that we need an introduction, but introducing the survey, the history of the survey, how it was developed, maybe how it even differed from years past. Talking about the introduction of place of discrimination, which was the biggest change this year. Talking about the houselessness over quota and recommendations and things we heard and learned from that community. Policing, the focus around sanctuary and what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, and the actual the results of where discrimination is happening. That's a lot to pack into 6 or 7 minutes. Am I the only one who thinks that? It just seems to me like to what extent is that even, can we even do that well in 6 to 7 minutes? Does that mean, and I'm saying this just to say, to raise questions around, and I don't want to keep delaying it, but is September too soon? Should this be multiple presentations? But then again, what is the effectiveness of that? Does this mean, I don't know what this means. Anyways, those are just things that I'm thinking about out loud.
If I may, I want to help to clarify, like, I would not suggest going deep in history of the survey and how it's changed. That strikes me as a level that I think they're hoping you'll handle as the Human Rights Commission. If you think about it, the council they want to know who you are and what are some high level issues that you're seeing, so I would think in 60 seconds, you can do, hey, we're the commission. We have a partnership with a university. This is our 5th annual survey where we really listen. In fact, we make a concerted effort with houseless neighbors. Key highlights this year: access, trust with policing and government, and I think if you unpack those, you'd hold their attention better. It's just something to think about.
Well, maybe I'm just bumping into the fact that I thank God Hamadi is going to be doing it, because I can't speak, I can't pack all that into 6. Maybe it's my own problem. Zeke, you've been waiting patiently.
Thank you so much. And I will just say, I have seen Hamadi do some excellent high level, high tension speaking before. I'm sure he'll be very capable. I think personally, my opinion is that I have seen, I think, well, I don't have extensive experience with talking before city councils, but I have, you know, watched that kind of thing before and spoken with some officials before. I think that there's a lot of truth in the less you say, the more every word counts.
Yeah.
You know, I think a 15-minute presentation, even if we were able to get access to that kind of time, I worry that that makes every individual word that we put forward less impactful. I think really, I think we're only hearing on the order of, you know, 3 or 4 major highlights from my perception of the conversation. So I guess with that being said, I do want to make the case for policing being one of them. I definitely would like to also work on that in the commission. To me, though, my perspective on that is that it's a both and kind of approach. I think that we have a lot of work that we're fortunate enough to be able to do when we have the lieutenant present in terms of asking questions about those programs. I had a question I was hoping to ask at the last meeting, but unfortunately the lieutenant was not there. I think what I would like this, I think though, what I worry most about is the council not having access to all the information. If I think about like, why are we here? Like, what's the point of even going to the council? It's to make sure that decision makers are as informed as possible about like the on the ground reality of how our constituents and our community are like thinking about this. And I think from that perspective, it is very, very important that they know the reality of who feels comfortable using city resources right now. I think there's a lot we can do as a commission to try and improve that. But I also think that the right now situation is something that the council really, really, really needs to thoroughly understand on a much more visceral level than from what my perspective of just talking to, you know, ordinary people in the community that aren't plugged into human rights issues. I think that there's a big gulf of understanding there. And that's what I think our presentation could do a lot to close in conjunction with these other issues. I think even saying 1 minute, I think the numbers are going to be way more impactful, though. I also want to clarify that. Saying X% of people in these communities have these specific issues, I don't think it's very convincing to say, like, Deke Drucker on the Human Rights Commission feels this way about police. I don't think the council cares about that. I think the council does care to a bigger extent what we actually have the numbers and the data for, and focusing on that. I don't think that needs to be a long conversation. I think the data, for the most part, can speak for itself. And I'll yield to Gretchen.
Oh, thanks. I just forgot to clarify. We also can put in a written report that will include all the documents. And I realized I should have mentioned that as well.
I just
Excellent.
kind of wanted I kind of wanted to just let you guys know I've spoken to a couple of the council members, just, you know, out and about. I've seen them at different events. They're very interactive. So even if we get up there, we say what we need to say, and we don't get all of it out, and if we extend an invitation, like, hey, if you want to know more, you know, or we'd like to tell you more, or however we put it to them, I would be willing to bet that some more of the council members would reach out and ask for that information. So let's not get in the mind that, you know, we have this one shot. Let's get it all, you know, because it's not one shot. We're standing up in front of them for this one time, but I'd be willing to bet that if we extend an invitation or we say, hey, you know, we'd like to talk further, so they would reach out.
Yeah, and I really wanted to emphasize that point too, which is to say, I believe I was talking to Councilor Stapleton on Monday, and I think she's going to the mayor soon about having a permanent liaison, a council liaison with the HRC, to having them come to all of our meetings. And so I think that you know the commission is fully complemented. There are a lot of I was being totally honest with her when I said I think there's a lot of engagement from folks on the commission. People are very passionate about this. We're getting to a point where I think we're the most active we've been in my time, my coming up on 1.5 years, and that lends itself only to more meaningful and more frequent conversations with council. And I think this is not the only opportunity, but an important opportunity to start a new chapter in the relationship with council, because we've been talking about, especially with this task force, and I expressed this to councilors a few days ago, where making human rights ought to always be a cornerstone of any legislative and deliberative governing body, and that is council. And the fact that we don't have frequent conversations or input is a problem. I think that this is one way. It's a limited way, but I think that hopefully with Hamadi's leadership at council, this can be the beginning of a lot of amazing things. So I just also wanted to emphasize that point. Okay, so I've heard a lot. To take a beat, I'll say I've heard, look, we can introduce ourselves, we can introduce the purpose of the survey and the HRC and kind of its development of this most recent survey in 60 seconds. That gives us 5 minutes to highlight important things, namely big takeaways from impacted populations, the overquota and the results surrounding our unhoused population, one of our most vulnerable communities in the Mid-Willamette Valley and in Oregon generally, and in Salem specifically. Talking about findings around policing and trust with law enforcement officers and government officials. Maybe to Zeke's earlier point, a larger conversation around policing generally and the urgent need, especially among our trans and LGBT community and our Latino community. Talking about focusing on sanctuary policy and looking to serve our indigenous Latin American community in the immediate future. And having council be a part of those early conversations as we navigate that. And talking about where we're seeing discrimination occurring most often and among what communities, which is one of the big things that was different about this year's survey, and that I think is really relevant to city leaders as they make decisions and weigh policy. And we will communicate that in 5 minutes. And doing that will solicit further conversation. And that really is what matters more, is that council is not think, well, I know all there is to know about human rights and I'll wait to see you next year. I think the purpose of this presentation ought to be, how do we get them to need to talk to us more, and how do we begin that conversation? I think that's a healthy way of thinking about it. That's what I'm hearing from folks. Does anybody else have anything that I to say or to add, or things I've gotten wrong, or things they want to talk about? Yep.
Yeah, you guys are as excited as I am, just saying. And I would really like a strong showing, like as many members that could come would be wonderful. Other than that, dude, I just think the whole thing's exciting. I think this is like a really big opportunity. And I think it's not even, I know we're going to make the most of it. So I just wanted to provide some encouragement. Like, don't feel overwhelmed. Like, we got this. This is what we do.
This is Kathy. I should ask a clarifying question. Are council meetings back in person? I'm so far behind.
Yes.
Well, I think the last several that I watched were online. Okay. Okay. And unfortunately, I will not be able to attend, but I will support you fully from afar.
There's always a streaming option, Kathy, but they're in person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else? Well, actually, I'll ask a question of Hamadi. Before September 11th, we have a few more conversations. What would you like to know from us as you prepare?
Just like I said earlier, I just want to make sure that we are hitting the points of the survey that everyone is in agreement are the most pertinent information, that we're putting that forward. I want to make sure that as much as possible, we're on the same page. I mean, I understand that not everybody's going to agree that this is important or this is important, but as much as possible, I'd like to make sure that we are presenting what's important to everyone.
Yeah.
And that's really what I think we should focus on, because for two reasons. For one, like I said, everyone's voice would be heard, and for two, it's a lot easier to be concise with the information we're putting across if we have very specific things we're working on.
Okay, we have 10 minutes left in our meeting. So I feel comfortable moving on, given that we have a few more conversations ahead of us. And I think we've had enough for folks to digest, unless people have other things top of mind regarding the council presentation. Kathy, I see you unmuting.
I do have a question about the written submission that will be included. Is that something that will come from Gretchen? Is that something that the commission needs to be working on? How is that put together?
Thank you. I was going to see how you all wanted to approach that. I'm happy, for example, to draft something and route it around for feedback, or to invite one of you to do an initial draft. There's a format that we need to fit into as kind of an information report that I could work with any potential interested writers on. But yeah, it's time to get going on drafting that document.
I was thinking is we're still talking about September, but that's limited time when we're talking about putting together a written product.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this something that we would want to start now, or is it something that we have enough time to put it before the rest of the HRC? I'm just wondering about timelines. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can, we can put it before HRC.
Or I guess even an email would work as well. Just like a mass email blast that, hey, this is what we're on board, and we'd like your input before the next meeting, so that way we can have something. I mean, even that might be.
Yeah. Hamadi, I wasn't sure how you wanted to approach it. Like one idea would be like, if you're thinking about your remarks and you'd like my help with drafting those, or if you'd like to draft those yourself and you'd like me to put together the staff report document, but then leave, like I could build in all the stuff about the survey and the history and the findings, and then have a section that's kind of key takeaways from the Human Rights Commission. And I could either draft that based on what I'm hearing and then have you all react to it, or you could write that and then I could plunk your language into the report, and then that's also what you speak from, we can do that either way.
Gretchen, you are amazing. I always want your help.
All right. Well, I could take a first crack and then invite folks' feedback based on what I'm hearing, but I'd really want folks to be sure to give feedback. And just a reminder, you can give me one-way feedback, like you can write to me, but we can't have group email discussions. I want to make sure any deliberation happens in the public meeting.
Okay.
And we only have the one full commission meeting between now and that council meeting, which is our August 9th meeting.
Correct. Yeah.
When does the material need to be submitted to council? Is that Thursday before, or is it longer than that?
It's a little longer than that now. This council and manager have gone to Wednesday, an attempt at Wednesday publishing instead of Thursday publishing. So the Wednesday before city council is when we aim to have everything published. And so honestly, technically 2 weeks prior is when staff are requested to start getting documents into our system, because there's a review and approval process that goes into that at our end. So ideally 2 weeks from the Wednesday before, but I can work with that a little bit. But for example, it works for me to get a document out to you all for your consideration and discussion at the August 9th meeting, and then I could put final touches on it and submit it. That would work.
Before we lose it, Zeke, you had your hand up.
Oh, just briefly, I was going to say that I would be able to work on the written document asynchronously. I can't make a commitment necessarily to meet about it, but if there's written feedback, I'd be happy to work with that. I also wanted to say, I think, Gretchen, that would mean for our meeting, we'd be talking about the 23rd of August. So that's 2 weeks after our meeting on the 9th. Is that correct for when we would need to have that in? Since you're nodding.
That sounds right. I hope, forgive me, I don't have a calendar in front of me for, let me take a look. I'm gonna get up in for a second. Yeah, that's correct.
So it's definitely a very tight timeline, but yeah, okay. I was just curious about exactly what that was.
Thank you for that, Zeke. Okay. I'm gonna table the rest of this conversation for our general meeting, and now we've given Gretchen some homework, as she always gets after these conversations. The community calendar, is that what it's called, Gretchen, for August? What's coming up?
Oh, what we have next is just to confirm the communication that this team wants to put out in August. You might remember there's a monthly
Yeah.
communication that goes out to our email groups.
Yeah, my question was, what is the topic? This is coming up?
Oh, forgive me.
Yeah.
We hadn't identified one. Well, excuse me, I'm going to take that back. There's two ideas. The first one is that Kelsey had mentioned that she would be up for writing something
That's right.
around Women's Equality Day. And I do have an email from her with a draft piece.
Okay.
And so I still need to take a more detailed look at it, but I can send it out to all of you. And so that would be an offering. The only other thing I've got is that the LGBTQIA+ Intersectional Rights Task Force did update their webpage to include a resource list. And we could also inform people about that, or we could save that for as it gets closer to Transgender Day of Remembrance as well, and do a save the date and pair that and do women's equality in August.
Their
That's
webpage?
the month.
Do we have a webpage, Gretchen? For our
Yeah,
task force?
the Human Rights Commission does, and then the LGBTQ group does. This particular task force does not.
Now, wait a minute. That doesn't seem right.
Well, you're welcome to. We can certainly build it out. I think the original, it's like you said, you're starting to evolve the purpose of the group. The group before was about, promoting awareness of the Human Rights Commission so that community members could utilize its resource.
Right. And so we
So
don't
it's
have a
really more
webpage.
about feeding the HRC as opposed
Okay.
to a separate group, but you can.
All right, well, we'll pick up there next time. Okay, so the communication from the LGBTQI+ task force and from Commissioner Murray, pending whatever. Sounds
There's
great to me.
also
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Salem Pride in the Park is Saturday, August 26th. That might be something we want to. I was going to ask. I haven't heard anything. I'm assuming we didn't get the opportunity to have a table at that event.
I actually haven't heard anything about that either, but I need to dig that up and see. I haven't seen a tabling invitation, but that would really surprise me because we've tabled several years in the past.
Yeah.
So it's
okay.
either not out yet or I've missed it somehow. So I can look around about that.
And if we do have a tabling opportunity for that, you can go ahead and pencil me in for it.
Yeah, I'd love to do that too. I'm sure a lot of us would. Okay. Any member remarks from anyone, really, since we're all kind of members?
This is kind of unrelated to the conversation, but I am going to be doing sports this coming season, so there's a chance that I won't be able to make it to the presentation. I really hope I can. I know I can make it to August meeting. I will likely not be able to make it to September and October's, but then I'll be all good to go. So it's just, we don't have schedules yet. I'm going to try and figure it out. I would love to be able to obviously participate, but we're going to see how it goes.
Well, and the good thing is we have two big conversations before presentations. So your input will be greatly appreciated in those conversations. What sport do you play?
I do cross country with West Salem High School. So,
Oh my goodness. West Salem High School.
yeah.
I was a Titan. Oh, good. You guys have all the new space. Anyways, that's cool. Good luck in your season. Anybody else have any member comments? I have two quick ones. Kathy, you seemed like you wanted to go. Please.
Just real quick, it's nice to have everybody here. It's been a few months since we've had a full meeting, and I just really appreciate you all coming and that we had a great conversation. So thank you. That's all.
Yes, I am very grateful for the engagement and looking forward to sustain engagement moving forward. Zeke, go ahead.
I just want to say to you, Joaquin, personally, I am so sorry I didn't respond to your email. Also, it was very kind, but I forgot to respond.
You know, I
Um,
did take it personal, but I will forgive you.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. But yes, thank you so much for just being open to that conversation. I'm glad we could work that out. Okay, thank you, and thank you to everyone else who's here.
Thank you for being here and for your input. My two comments are, I'm grateful I saw some of you, maybe not some of you literally here, but some of the commission members at the ODC's events this month. I saw Krista and some other folks there, and so I'm grateful for that. We put a lot of effort into those, and I hope folks found them to be interesting. And the second was that I gave testimony to City Council on Monday. Not, of course, on behalf of the commission, but I around the death of Russell Michaelis, who is an unhoused gentleman who died who sustained injuries from an assault related to his housing status and disability in late June, and who died last Tuesday, or who died last Monday. We heard of his death last Tuesday, and happy to hear from folks if they saw it and had comments about remarks. But I thought it was very much in the spirit of what we do here, and I framed in my comments in such a way that I was reflecting on what we do here at the commission around promoting justice and protecting human rights and communicating areas of moral interest and concern to the public, and I thought that was a part of our mission that I was carrying forward in that way, and on an issue that I think deserves our greater attention, both as a city, but also maybe even as the commission, and the issue around increasing rates of violence against physical violence against our unhoused neighbors. And I think that could be a topic of future conversation as well. But that's a general comment. Anything else, so that I'm not holding you too late tonight? Thank you again for all of you being here, Hamadi, Lisa, Hope, Zeke, especially as guests. You're welcome anytime. And if any of you are interested in being permanent members of the task force, please do come. Any other comments? Well, thank you, and have a beautiful evening, and I'll be talking soon.